Hi, I am reviewing Michael Moorcock's The Rituals of Infinity, which is a rather nice little arrow book that I picked up on my November book haul. Look at that artwork, it's so very 60s. So this book was copyrighted to Michael Moorcock in 1965, but it was published in 1967. It had another name as well. It was The Wrecks of Time. I don't know, might be an America, England thing. So, let me start with Michael Moorcock. Michael Moorcock is an amazing, well-known science fiction author. In the 60s and 70s, he was everywhere. People talk about the greats of Heinlein, Asimov, and Clarke or Ray Bradbury, depending on who you're talking to, but everyone knew Michael Moorcock. Everyone who read science fiction knew Michael Moorcock. Many people who didn't read science fiction still knew Michael Moorcock. And his books were in every single second-hand shop. He was never my favourite of authors. Some of the things he did felt a bit naff. And I felt the same way about Philip Jose Farmer, by the way. I adored his Elric of Melniboné books, and there were a few others that I liked. However, like I said, he was everywhere. So you'd walk into a second-hand shop, you'd find Michael Moorcock, you'd buy Michael Moorcock, you'd read it, and you'd go, that wasn't his best book. And after you've read a large number of books and said that wasn't his best book, you start wondering maybe does he have any best books? Maybe he's got a lot of books, but maybe none of them are all that great. And so I drifted away from him. Now, in November the 1st, when I was doing my ridiculous book haul of over 170 books, I came across quite a lot of Moorcocks, and I thought maybe this is time to start reading them again. I won't lie, it was an Elric of Melniboné book that made me think of it, but I picked up a couple of other ones as well. I picked up Rituals of Infinity, at least partly due to the fact that the writing was easy to read. One of the other ones I was looking at had writing of about 2 millimeters high, and I just wasn't up for that. So, Rituals of Infinity, the story. Yes, there will be spoilers. Can you spoil something that's older than me and half the other people who will ever watch this? No, I can't spoil that. So, just, if you're going to read it and you don't want to know what happens, don't watch. Watch later. So, it starts off with an excellent concept, and this book does have an excellent concept. The narration can be a little bit less than awesome. The continuity isn't always there, and occasionally I feel it was a bit wobbly in its writing, but the story is great. So the story is that there are 15 subspatial versions of Earth, all wildly different from each other, all strung along in this stream through subspace. Subspace can be travelled using a tunnel, which is traversed using certain machinery that this organisation possesses. Now, we start this book and continue all the way through in third person with a specific hero. He isn't very heroic, but he isn't quite an anti-hero. Moorcock's main character for this book is called Falstaff, and he's the head of the organisation. And the backstory of the way the worlds work is given to us lecture style as Falstaff inducts a new recruit, Bowen, who he has just transported to E1. E1 being Earth 1, the original world, where Falstaff and his father, who first discovered the subspace situation, come from. Now, the Earth stretched all the way away from Earth 1 to Earth 15, and all these Earth analogues rely for their continued existence on a number of transponders. One has just been stolen from, I think it's Earth 15. I might be getting my 15s and my 16s mixed up. There used to be 16 Earths in a row, but number 16 was destroyed by the bad guys because there's an enemy group, the D Squad, and D stands for demolition. Cute. They stage raids and do bad guy enemy stuff on all the different Earths except for Earth 1. They've never gone to Earth 1. There used to be 24 Earths in the network, and now there are only 15, so we know they are really seriously bad guy people. These bad guys use machines to create unstable matter locations. The unstable matter location sort of roils in this colourful, cloudy royalness. I suspect that's it right there. Until it turns dark, and then it spreads and the world becomes destroyed. These machines are called something disruptor. Matter disruptor. Matter disruptor. SMDs, maybe? Forgot. So there's a small number of adjusters, small teams of men from the organisation, and yes, they are men, because 1965, 1967, what do you expect? They use these adjusters to adjust matter back after the bad guys, or the D Squad, swoop in to create a matter disruption. They use the adjusters to bring it back online, and they are often successful. Sometimes their success isn't total, and strange things happen to the world. Like one of the Earths has this strange crystalline structure, for example. Each one of these Earths is completely unique. One is fully jungle, one is fully ocean versus desert. There's the crystalline one, as I mentioned. There's a whole heap of different things that can happen. Now, all of this is being explained to the recruit Bowen in a slideshow and more, which I haven't included. And here's the thing. I didn't really truly fall for this book until the last third, because there were inconsistencies that made it less than stellar. At this point, so we're not too far into the book at this stage, we've already seen some enemy action, maybe. Falstaff believes he's being chased by two mysterious characters that don't seem quite human, and he believes they're, if not the actual D Squad, then they're related to the D Squad. We've just been told how this world is set up, us being Bowen or the reader. The mature reader at this point is asking, of course, why the bad guys want to disrupt these worlds. But Falstaff's organisation does not seem to have ever questioned the fact. They are bad guys, they're doing bad guy stuff, we are good guys, we're going to try and stop them from doing bad guy stuff. That seems to be as mature, evolved and organisational as you get here. And for the mature reader, it's not really quite enough. By now we've reached about page 40, there's been all this exposition, and your average toddler by now would be asking, but why? And you, as an adult reader, are probably asking, but why? And though you find out at the end, the fact that Falstaff's organisation never wants things to query this, and doesn't seem to have attempted to make any contact with the D Squad or find out what's happening, it's a bit weird. Oh, there's this other group too. They're scavengers who used to belong to Falstaff's organisation, but they split off. And they just go scavenging around the world through these subspace tunnels for everything they can find. The world building is good, but it's not as developed as it would be if it was written today. It feels old. It feels like a book that was written in the 60s, because you know what? It was. I feel that a lot more could be done with the world structure, but it isn't. Okay, so in the very first bit, we had Falstaff driving through the desert, and he picks up a hitchhiking young woman who's hitchhiking in the desert in a bathing suit. Nancy Hunt. She is one of the two females that appear in this whole novel, and she is, for about 3/4 of the novel, I was thinking she's got to be a plant. She's got to be from D Squad. She's got to be from whoever's running things. She's got to be behind the scenes. No one just writes a young woman hitchhiking in the middle of the desert in a bathing suit for the purpose of her riding along with Falstaff and then having sex with him in a motel and appearing and disappearing in his apartment for the rest of the book. She's got to be something, but no, she's not. She's just that. She's a young woman in a bathing suit who is there for the apparent only purpose of demonstrating to us how sexually attractive Falstaff is, even though Moorcock has described him in ways that would not normally be considered the most attractive. Apparently his personality, his charisma and everything are the attractive bits, and we have this demonstrated to us Mostly by him picking up a young woman and taking her to a motel, and then giving her the key to his apartment. Ouch. 1960s. Ouch. Thank God they're gone. Okay, so for the first part of the book, Falstaff is really just a locus for the story. It revolves around him. We find out about the Earths, we find about the attacks. He goes to an Earth that's being attacked. It's number 16, and the D Squad succeed in destabilizing it enough so that it goes. Falstaff escapes with the assistance of one of two scavenger groups who he's met before. It felt early on that Moorcock wasn't really giving us enough to create a well-defined character. But by the end, somehow, by some sort of osmosis, we had a well-defined, unique character who was very much his own person. The descriptions of his moral standard are high. There's a whole heap about him that makes him a unique character. But reading it in 2023, it felt odd because none of the sort of mechanisms that would be used by a modern writer are used here. I don't quite know how it was done. I like the result. I enjoyed the reading, but I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time because I don't quite understand how he did it. And maybe that's a great author. Maybe that's an author. I'm going to be thinking about this book for ages. Maybe that's all you really want from an author. At times, Falstaff did not feel believable to me. For example, he's a scientist. He's meant to be this U-Butte scientist who can manage all these subspace tunnelings and subspace communications and subspace fishing trips and all the other subspaces. But he's described as not being curious or particularly philosophical about the world. And I can get a scientist who's not particularly introspective. I can swallow that. But a scientist who believes that thinking causes trouble, as we are told on page 53, I don't think that's a particularly good scientist. That's not my idea of a good scientist. Like I said, the writing sometimes can be a bit hit or miss. You can't always understand from one paragraph to another who Moorcock's talking about. But I was enjoying it and I was intrigued about it. And the last third really sucked me in and I was fascinated by what was happening. I was fascinated by the narrative. It turns out that these two characters that Falstaff met, who incidentally is called Fusty by Nancy, and I suppose that's supposed to be cute. Maybe. There's two characters, both of them are largely unpronounceable, I've got to say. I'll try to find them though. So one's a female, only she's a robot, not a female. Spoiler. Android Maggie. Maggie White, that's it. And in the beginning it describes her as looking absolutely beautiful and having everything that a woman needs to be attractive. I don't think you need to pass the bucket for me just yet, but whatever. Only she's got a coldness and uncontactability that lead him to believe that she might be an android, especially when he later discovers that the D Squad that was sent to demolish E15 were actually androids. He gets a chance to examine them and finds that they're made rather than born. The other character is called Stiflomice, something like that. And Falstaff is first suspicious of him because he describes himself. He meets it when the two of them meet in the motel with Nancy and waiting in the bedroom for whatever. Stiefelmaus describes himself as coming from Sweden. In this version of Earth that they are in, which I think might have been E3 or E4, Sweden doesn't exist. Virtually none of Europe has survived. There's another version of Earth where practically all that has survived is Europe. So it's very diverse in that regard. Anyhow, at the end, it all comes together in a really unique way. So we've got this Maggie White and we've got Stiffelmoose who obviously aren't real people. They come from the board of directors. I don't know, they're called something really. The principals. They come from the principals. And they're trying to convince Falstaff to stop defending humans and the different versions of Earth and to let the D-squads get along with demolishing them. He's going, no, 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 loss of life, millions of people are being killed, it's just inhumane and I'm not going to do it. You'd think he'd ask why he had to, but no, he just says, I shan't. Both of them tell him that the repercussions are huge and it's way beyond his ability to understand. And the whole end of it is this, everything is way beyond your ability to understand concept. So not only have there been some 20 odd, but there have been thousands of Earths. And we eventually find out that there is a race that evolved on the original Earth, who went out to travel the galaxy. They became immortal. When they tried to come back to Earth, it wasn't right. They're trying to recreate it. And this notion of gods that aren't that godlike is, I think that's a very strong Moorcock thing, because Moorcock described himself as pragmatist, anarchist, and that he really did enjoy having aristocratic heroes and gods, but never making them as humorlessly perfect as some other writers make them. So here we have these massive gods, then the process of creating a new Earth, which Falstaff had never seen before. They end up on this Earth Zero after nuclear warfare started raging on Earth 1. And he eventually manages to get Maggie White to take him to meet these principals. At which point he has a bit of a Q&A with them, ends up telling them that no matter how often they keep doing this, it's not going to work because they're missing a few things in life. He asks them about art, beauty, pleasure, joy, and they know nothing about all of that. And he goes, oh, well, then you're never really going to be supreme beings, are you? You need to let us do our own thing. Paraphrasing a little bit. You're not getting it right. Since it's after thousands of attempts, it should be pretty obvious they're not getting it right. They do eventually succumb to Falstaff's superior reasoning and amazing charisma or whatever. And they stop destroying the Earths, and they let the Earths continue on their own evolution to see where they arrive at. It's a good ending. I really did like it. I don't know that I've spoiled it for you by telling you this, because I feel that Falstaff coming face to face with the principals was telegraphed for a fair bit of the book. There is a twist to the ending that really reminded me a fair bit of Norse mythology. Actually, there's a couple of twists, and I know Moorcock wasn't really big on the mythologies like Tolkien was. He wasn't that big on Tolkien either, I believe. But there's a twist to the way the Earths are being left to continue to develop that is really quite good. I'm not going to mention it. It's not essential. But it does... At the end, you feel that you've got the characters and you feel that you've got the story. You feel that you've got all those things that you get from a really good author and from a really good book. So for all its flaws, I will probably end up rating this 4, if not 5 stars on Goodreads. I'm definitely hanging on to it. I will want to read it again because, well, during the reading, it didn't feel as complex or as elaborate as it could have. The aftermath of reading, sitting and thinking about what you read and turning over the events and the characters in your own head, that's an incredibly rich experience. So this was a great book to read for a while and then walk around and think about what you were reading. Gulping it all down immediately like a more modern novel, I don't think it would have worked, because it leaves too much to the imagination and that thought process of the actual reader. So I actually ended up being really impressed by this Michael Moorcock. I'm going to be reading more of the Moorcocks that I have, and I'm quite looking forward to them now. So, yes, The Rituals of Infinity. written by a very young Moorcock. I do recommend to any classic sci-fi person, and read it. Read it. There's a lot of good in there. It's certainly worth it.